What's up guys, welcome back to the Piston Show. I'm Kashi Dylan. Today we have here with us the Scrambler 1200X. It has been launched in Malaysia last year at 80,900 ringgit, but Triumph Malaysia has only just registered a test unit. So one of the things about being an automotive content creator or motoring journalist here in Malaysia is that sometimes we have to wait for the rest of the world to get through their reviews until the bike trickles down to us. We are, after all, a very small market. So if you're wondering why our review is coming out a full year after the bike, or a year and a half after the bike was launched in global markets, well, that's sort of why. We do not have an official Triumph presence here in Malaysia. We only rely on distributors and dealers to provide such motorcycles. Anyway, the wait has been worth it because the Scrambler 1200X is just a really nice motorcycle. When you first look at it, you're like, wow, what is that? You know, it's this retro, old school, good looks really do well for the overall ambience and the style and riding character of the bike. Before I go any further, I just want to let you hear how good this bike sounds like. Put it into neutral. Oh, sounds so good. It's on stock exhaust, but there's a secret behind why it sounds so good, which I will tell you more about later. So stick around. But first we'll take a look at the specifications of the bike before you start talking about how good it feels and on the road and such. Starting up ahead, you get Metzeler Karoo 21-inch tires up front. Adds to the character of the bike. You get about 37 spokes over here, and the Metzeler tires tubeless, of course. Besides that, these fog lamps that you're seeing up here, these are aftermarket accessories. So there are a couple of things about this bike that are not quite standard. The other thing being this windscreen, of course. And of course the turn signals as well. These are aftermarket accessories, and other than that, it seems to suit the overall character of the bike quite well. And besides, other than that though, you come towards here, you get a 13-litre fuel tank. The instrument cluster of the bike has been carried over from the Triumph Trident, has with a little bit of the switches around the bike as well. The 1200cc parallel twin engine makes about 90 PS and about 110 Newton meters of torque. I think this is also the same unit that you'll find in other Triumph bikes such as the Bonneville as well as the Speed 1200. Now, other than that, I did find that this straight-ish seat looks really good, no doubt, but it seems it can be a little bit stiff, particularly for long distances. So a little bit more cushioning would be nice. It sits about 820 millimeters off the ground, but there's also a low seat option which brings this down to 790 millimeters. The swing arm is slightly shorter than the one that you'll find on the Scrambler 1200XE, which, by the way, is not yet available in Malaysia. I've tried looking on Triumph Malaysia's website, and I just can't find any details about the Scrambler 1200XE, so I'm guessing it's not yet available here. But anyway, the swing arm is about 30 inches or something shorter than the ones on the Scrambler XE. And if you're wondering what the XE is, that is the top spec Scrambler, and that is better suited to off-roading, whereas this bike, as I found out, is quite likes to, its natural habitat being the regular roads that we are soon going to go spend some time with. But the Scrambler 1200X is not the first motorcycle to have this side-mounted exhaust. Now this is something that has been a character of the Scrambler ever since it was introduced back in 2019. In fact, some old school motorcycles, the Scramblers particularly, have had their exhaust mounted on the side just like this as well, hence the inspiration. But that just begs the question, is it hot? Well, the previous generation models were known to actually leave some burn marks on your thighs. Well, this Triumph claims to have been improved. How much more improved? Because we live here in Malaysia where our weather can be searing hot. So to understand how hot it can be, I decided to wear my regular denims to sort of mimic everyday rideability, because you know we don't always ride with our padded jeans and such, whether you like to admit it or not. There are instances where we ride with our regular denims, and basically the verdict is it still can be quite hot. We got lucky today because the weather's been great. It's been wet, hence everything underneath and at the bottom is all soaking wet as well. But verdict is still might just burn your inner thigh. And the other thing that you should know, don't ride the Scrambler with shorts. What better way to try out the Scrambler 1200X than in the rain? That's the camera crew in that car over there, and I'm about to jump on this bike, go on this nice roads. It's a little bit slippery, so I got to be careful for that. But the good thing about the Scrambler is that it comes with different riding modes, 3 of them to be exact, and this should be fun. As I pointed out earlier in this video, this bike comes with a bunch of Triumph accessories, such as this windscreen over here, which not only adds to the visual appeal of the bike, but also it also works to keep wind blasts away for until about 120 kilometers per hour. And this is my favorite part, starting up this bike, which does not have which has its silencer removed. So I'm riding in road mode, which should be enough, and should be okay actually. And it runs on Metzeler Karoo tires, which apparently are more off-road biased. So let's just find out how it handles this. The thing about this Marzocchi suspension system is that some have criticized it for being a little bit too stiff, but I think they're just nice. They're quite soft, they handle the bumps really well, and that means that it's actually quite nice to ride in the city on a day-to-day basis, and I've actually got no complaints about them. But one thing I really love about this bike is the way it sounds without the silencer, of course. I'm not sure whether that's legal, so if you come across a JPJ roadblock, that might just get you into some trouble. But the good thing about Triumph motorcycles is that there are always a bunch of aftermarket accessories, including exhausts. I've seen videos of this bike with the Zard exhaust system, and it just sounds amazing. Anyway, if you're wondering where I'm riding, these are the back roads. Talk about JPJ. Here's JPJ. Long life. Anyway, if you're wondering where I'm riding on the back roads of Janderbike and Bukit Tinggi. I just love the way this bike sounds, man. It's so intoxicating. Anyway, this Metzeler Karoo tires seem to be better suited for off-road. They don't inspire a lot of confidence, especially in the wet. I've been riding in the wet for a good part of this morning, and no, wow, all these Triumph riders, as well as Desert X. Nice. So I'm not the only one plowing these roads that on this Wednesday morning. Anyway, the nice thing about this bike is that it's very easy to ride. It's a very approachable machine. You know, when you first look at this bike in the showrooms, you're thinking, wow, 1200 engine on such a small frame, and it seems very intimidating. But in all honesty, it's not. It's quite easy to ride this bike. So if you are that's the thing about these roads, yeah, there are a lot of stray dogs that just tend to make themselves comfortable in the middle of the road. So anyway, it's a very approachable bike. It's very easy, and it's super easy to get comfortable with. Of course, if you're on the taller side of the height spectrum, that will always make it easier. It comes with the standard seat, which is about 820 millimeters off the ground. And but the good thing is there is aftermarket seats, not aftermarket from a different supplier, but from Triumph catalog itself. So the low seat option brings it down to 790 millimeters. So if you're a little bit shorter, that should do the trick. And the other thing about this bike is that power delivery, especially in this current road mode that I'm on, is very linear. I'm in third gear, don't really need to shift a lot. I can go up to fifth and I'll still have a bunch of torque to rely on. That's what I really appreciate, the friendliness of this machine. So we don't get the XE, the Scrambler XE in Malaysia, not yet at least. I've seen it. I haven't seen it on the website. Oh, I've seen these guys earlier, so I was a bit confused about that. About that corner entry. See, they distracted me again. Anyway, the Scrambler XE, I haven't seen it. But the thing about the Scrambler XE is I've read that it's better suited to touring. Oh, check out all the sand patches. It's got wider handlebars, it's got taller suspension, and it just sits a lot higher off the ground. And the standard Scrambler 1200X is on the opposite side. It's lower. The suspension is shorter, even though it still comes with 170 millimeters of travel, and the ground clearance is a lot lower as well. And that just basically means that it's quite well suited as an urban machine. And I can say that I can imagine myself living with this bike on a day-to-day basis. No issues, no dramas. And that's one thing that I appreciate about. That's the other thing. There are plenty of things I appreciate about the Scrambler 1200X. And that's the other thing, the livability of this bike. It looks good. I love the retro looks of the Scrambler 1200X. I love it. And couple that to this amazing exhaust note, and it's just such a nice machine. Something usable, something livable. And because the handlebars are supposedly a little bit narrower than, a couple of inches narrower than the ones on the Scrambler XE, that means it's easier to carve through traffic without nicking all those side view mirrors of very expensive cars. So that just means that you could ride this bike on a day-to-day basis, whether it's to your office or something of that sort. This exhaust note is just so intoxicating, man. Anyway, I'm turning the bike around over here and heading back to the camera crew. And then now I'm going to keep quiet and let you enjoy the exhaust note on these beautiful winding roads here in Janda Baik, Malaysia. And I'll keep talking whenever I can. I just want to immerse myself in this experience. So now, we have to beg the question, is the Scrambler 1200X worth the 80,900 ringgit that Triumph Malaysia wants for it? Well, to answer that question, you got to kind of understand the purpose of this bike. Because the Scrambler 1200X is obviously a motorcycle whose heritage lays in, well, scrambling and off-roading. But then again, times have changed and we are proper off-roaders to go, well, off-roading. So then what's the purpose of the Scrambler 1200X? Well, the purpose of this bike, in my opinion at least, is to look really cool. Now we all have spent hours and hours on Instagram lusting after all the social media influencers with doing their thing with bikes like the Scrambler 1200X. And that just leads me to conclude that this is a bike that's all about style. I think the Scrambler 1200X is also a really good day-to-day city bike. I believe that it's a bike that you could ride to office, park in places, and yet at the same time, because it has pretty good ground clearance, you could jump curbs, park it on curbs and such. So if you are in the market for a day-to-day motorcycle, such as a street twin, a speed twin, or even a street triple and such, then I think the Scrambler 1200X might just be worth considering, because it definitely has a really fun engine, no doubt about that. And then on top of that, there's no denying that it is a very good looking bike. Of course, there are things about it that I think could be better, such as, like I've already pointed out, I think the brakes could do with a little bit more bite. A lot of people complain about the suspension, but for me it's just nice. I do think that the seat could do with a little bit more padding, but then again, at 80,900 ringgit, you get a 1200cc retro Scrambler. When it comes to good looks, there's simply no beating this. So that's it. If you're in the market for a day-to-day bike, give this bike a consideration. Thank you for watching, guys. Do hit the subscribe button